A $20 Monopoly box sits on a sales shelf. The real money gets made somewhere else entirely. A different name sat inside every Monopoly box for decades. And it probably wasn't the person who actually invented the game. A Star Wars edition sits on that same shelf. The real money isn't the game. It's the logo on the lid. A life-size Monopoly board gets built into a city street. The real money is rent on the brand, not the squares. This is why. You have spent hours moving little green houses around a board. But Hasbro makes almost nothing from the actual game you play. In 2023, a mobile version of this same game, Monopoly Go, made Hasbro more than $1 billion in its first 7 months alone. The $20 box on your table never had a chance of competing with that. Think about the version you grew up with. A cardboard box in the hall cupboard, frayed at the corners. A missing greenhouse everyone blames a younger sibling for losing. Everything about that experience tells you the value of Monopoly lives in the object you bought. You paid for the printed board, the metal tokens, and the rulebook. Hasbro leans into that feeling. Monopoly sells in more than 100 countries, in dozens of languages, for around $20 a box. By Hasbro's own count, more than 1 billion people have played it at least once. So it feels natural to assume this sea of cardboard boxes is where the money sits. But look more closely at the price tag. Retailers run the Classic Edition on 2-for-1 offers and Black Friday deals that bring the price below $20. Analysts who study the toy business estimate that a mass-market board game at that price might cost only a few dollars in cardboard, plastic, and printing. That sounds like an easy profit. Until you watch where the rest of the money goes. The retailer takes a cut for stocking it. A distributor takes a cut for shipping it. And whatever is left is Hasbro's revenue. On a $20 box, Hasbro might see only a few dollars in actual revenue before its own design and marketing costs come out. The cardboard Monopoly you buy behaves almost like a loss leader. It keeps the brand in your house and plants the logo on your shelf. The real money arrives once Monopoly leaves the toy aisle and starts behaving like real estate. The landlord model reaches back into your childhood cupboard too. Early Monopoly sets from the 1930s now sell for far more than their original price. Some first edition boxes have produced 4-figure results at auction. Most families who clear out an attic never see that money. They give old games to charity shops or throw them away, thinking of them as disposable toys. Meanwhile, collectors and dealers capture the upside. Hasbro watches this demand and turns it into a strategy. Every so often, the company releases another anniversary edition, retro artwork, metal tokens, a premium price. A fan who already owns an ordinary Monopoly set will pay again for a version that matches the memory of the set their grandparents had. The extra money isn't necessarily for new rules. It's for the feeling of owning a piece of history. And that word, history, is where Monopoly's own story gets uncomfortable. For decades, Hasbro's official version credited an unemployed Philadelphia salesman named Charles Darrow with inventing the game in his basement during the Depression. Darrow supposedly sold it to Parker Brothers and became a millionaire almost overnight. That story appeared on the box for years. It was also mostly false. The real inventor was a woman named Elizabeth Magie. In 1904, she patented a game called The Landlord's Game 3 decades before Darrow ever played a version of it at a friend's house. Magie designed her game specifically to criticize landlords. She wanted to show how a handful of property owners could bleed everyone else dry through rent. Parker Brothers eventually bought her patent for just $500, with no royalties, ever. Then the company spent decades crediting Darrow instead as the game's sole self-made inventor. Hasbro's own executives have since acknowledged that Magie inspired the game. But her name still isn't the one printed on the box. The game built to warn people about landlords ended up being taken from its actual inventor by the company that published it. That's a fairly exact preview of how the rest of this business still runs today. Today, Monopoly is less a single product and more an ecosystem of licenses. The red stripe. Mr. Monopoly. The name itself. Their intellectual property. A piece of intangible real estate that Hasbro owns. And other companies pay for the right to build on it. You can see it everywhere. City editions backed by tourism boards. Sports editions featuring major leagues. Movie tie-ins that combine Monopoly with someone else's franchise. Behind every one of those boxes is a contract. Sometimes Hasbro pays a partner to use their world inside Monopoly. Other times, a partner pays Hasbro to put Monopoly onto their product. Either way, the brand is being treated like land you can rent, not a toy you own. Licensing consultants say that for mass-market toys, a typical royalty rate can sit in the low double digits of wholesale price. Once the game itself has been designed, much of that royalty can be highly profitable. And Monopoly is unusually well suited to this. The whole game is streets, stations, and utilities arranged around a square. That makes it relatively easy to replace those properties with a new city's landmarks or a sponsor's locations without changing the core rules. By Monopoly's 90th anniversary, Hasbro counted more than 300 officially licensed editions worldwide. Each one represents another opportunity to monetize the brand. And here's where the twist lands. On the surface, Monopoly is a game about teaching children to buy property and charge rent. In practice, the company behind Monopoly behaves like the landlord. When a mobile studio, casino operator, or attraction wants to build something using the Monopoly name, they sign a license. And none of those deals require printing another cardboard board. You, the player, never receive any of that money. When you buy a Monopoly board, you receive a product for personal use. You don't receive a stake in the Monopoly brand. Owning the physical board doesn't mean you own the intellectual property underneath it. In the real version of this business, the company that owns the name controls every square. Look beyond the licensing contracts, and Monopoly starts appearing in places that have nothing to do with family game night. On your phone, in casinos, inside walk-in attractions. Monopoly Go, the mobile game licensed from Hasbro, has generated more than $3 billion in player spending since its 2023 launch. Monopoly-themed slot machines run on casino floors from Las Vegas to Macau. One licensed slot title alone reportedly brought in more than $2 billion in its first 10 months. And in London, a walk-in attraction called Monopoly Life-Sized charges more for a 90-minute session than a retail Monopoly box costs outright. In every case, Hasbro isn't simply collecting a one-time payment for a toy. It's collecting ongoing rent for access to a brand. In one report, covering licensed gaming revenue across a full year, Monopoly out-earned every other toy or game franchise on Earth, including Pokémon. The board on your table was just the tutorial. The real game is everywhere else. Go back to that family game night. You counted every dollar, argued over every rent payment, dreamed about owning all 4 railroads. The lesson the game taught was simple. If you bought cleverly enough, you could control the board. But in reality, the only move you ever made was buying a ticket in. Hasbro kept the land underneath it, the copyrights, the trademarks, and the right to decide who else gets to build on them. When you download a Monopoly app or walk into a Monopoly attraction, you're not stepping outside the game. You're stepping deeper onto Hasbro's board. The money collected in those spaces doesn't flow back to the households that kept the brand alive for generations. It flows upward to the company that owns the name. That's remarkably similar to what happened to Parker Brothers a century ago, and to the woman who invented the original idea and was paid $500 for it. So the next time you pull a faded Monopoly box off a shelf and ask who wants to play, remember what's actually happening. You're not just opening a game. You're stepping onto a piece of corporate real estate, one that the company behind it can keep renting out long after your own board has worn through at the corners. This is the Markup.